She had waited 12 years for this moment. 12 years of watching other kids sit at pianos. 12 years of pressing her fingers against a piece of cardboard, pretending the lines she had drawn were real keys. And then 10 minutes into her very first piano lesson, she walked out the door. She never looked back. At least, that's what everyone thought. If you've ever been told you're not good enough by a teacher, a parent, a coach, or even by your own voice inside your head, stay waiting. Because this story is going to hit differently. And trust me, you don't want to miss where it goes. Before we dive in, if you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on the bell, because we tell stories on this channel that stay with you long after the video ends. And if you know someone who needs to hear a story like this today, share it with them. It might be exactly what they need. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Her name was Maya. She was 23 years old, living in a small apartment in a city that felt too big and too loud for someone as quiet as her. She worked a regular office job during the day, came home tired every evening, ate dinner alone most nights. And then, this is the part that matters, she would sit at her little desk by the window, put on her headphones, and listen to piano music for hours. Not pop songs. Not background music. Real piano. Chopin. Jeroma. Sometimes Beethoven. She didn't fully understand the theory behind it. She didn't know the names of all the chords or the scales. But she felt it. Every single note. She felt it in her chest, in her throat, in that quiet place behind her eyes, where emotions live before they become words. Maya had loved piano since she was a little girl. She remembered being 7 years old, sitting in her school's auditorium, watching an older student perform at the annual recital. The girl on stage looked so calm, so certain, like she was speaking a language that only she and the piano understood. Maya had sat in the third row with her mouth slightly open, completely still, thinking, I want to do that. I want to feel that. But life doesn't always give us what we reach for, does it? Her family didn't have the money for lessons. Her school didn't have a music program. The years passed, the way years do quietly, without asking permission. Elementary school became middle school. Middle school became high school. High school became a job, a lease, a routine. And that little girl in the third row with the wide eyes and the open mouth grew into a young woman who had learned to carry her dreams in silence. But here's the thing about a real dream. You can fold it up. You can put it in a drawer. You can cover it with responsibility and practicality and the noise of everyday life. But it never fully goes away. It just waits. So one autumn evening, after 3 glasses of courage and one too many late-night YouTube videos of piano tutorials, Maya did something she had never done before. She looked up piano teachers in her area, and she found one. A woman who taught out of a studio not far from her apartment. The reviews were decent. The price was manageable, just barely. She sent an email before she could talk herself out of it. The teacher replied the next morning. There was an opening on Saturday at 10. Maya barely slept that week. Saturday morning came, and she got dressed like she was going somewhere important. Because to her, she took the bus, walked 2 blocks in the cool morning air, and stood in front of a plain brown door with a small handwritten sign that said studio. She stood there for almost a full minute before she knocked. The teacher's name was Mrs. Callahan. She was a woman in her late 50s, with reading glasses pushed up on her forehead and the kind of posture that told you she had been sitting at pianos her entire life. She opened the door, looked Maya up and down once, and said, "You're late." Maya checked her phone. She was 4 minutes early. That was the first sign, but Maya told herself to be patient. The lesson started with the basics. How to sit, how to position your hands, how to read a simple line of sheet music. Maya listened carefully. She asked questions. She tried, and yes, she made mistakes. Her fingers didn't cooperate the way she wanted them to. She pressed the wrong keys. She lost her place on the page. She laughed nervously at herself. The way you do when you're trying something new and you're a little embarrassed, but also genuinely excited to learn. And then Mrs. Callahan said it. She didn't shout. She didn't even raise her voice. She just looked at Maya's hands on the keys and said, very plainly, "Some people have natural rhythm. Some people have a feel for music. And some people, she paused, just long enough for the silence to do its damage. Just don't. The room went very quiet. Maya looked up. She waited for the sentence to continue. For a softening, a redirect. Some kind of, but here's what we can work on. It never came. Mrs. Callahan simply turned back to the sheet music and said, "Let's try the exercise again." But something had shifted. Something small and quiet inside Maya had cracked. She tried the exercise again. Her fingers trembled slightly this time. Not from nerves, but from something heavier. She lost her place again. Mrs. Callahan made a sound with her tongue. Not a word. Just a sound. The kind that says more than words ever could. Maya sat at that piano for 3 more minutes. Then she set her hands in her lap. She looked at the sheet music one more time. She looked at her fingers, and then she stood up, picked up a bag from the floor beside the bench, and said, "I'm sorry. Primera ave to go." She walked out of that studio, down the 2 blocks, and sat at the bus stop with her hands folded in her lap. She didn't cry. She was too numb to cry. She just sat there while the morning went on around her, people walking dogs, kids on bikes, the whole world moving at its normal pace. And she thought to herself, very quietly, very finally, that's it. That was the first lesson, and it will be the last. She believed that with everything in her. But here's what Maya didn't know on that bus ride home. She didn't know that the moment you decide to give up on something you truly love, that's not the end of the story. That's just the end of the first chapter. And sometimes the most beautiful stories in the world begin exactly there, in the wreckage of the first attempt. In the silence after the door closes, that was her first lesson, and she was sure it would be her last. But life had other plans. If this story is already making you feel something, drop a comment below and tell me. Have you ever walked away from something you loved because someone made you feel like you weren't good enough? Your answer might surprise you, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder today that one bad moment does not define them. Maya went home that Saturday and did what most of us do when something hurts too much to look at directly. She buried it. She put the memory of that lesson in a box, pushed the box to the back of her mind, and told herself it was over. She was done. It wasn't meant for her. Some people have it. Some people don't. Mrs. Callahan had made that very clear. She deleted the YouTube tutorials from her watch history. She took down the small poster of a piano she had pinned above her desk, the one she had been looking at every single morning for 2 years. She even stopped listening to her piano playlists for a while, because the music felt too close to something she was trying not to feel. Weeks passed, then a month, then 2. And on the outside, Maya was fine. She went to work. She came home. She ate dinner. She scrolled through her phone like everyone else. She smiled when she needed to smile. Nobody around her would have known that something inside her had gone quiet in a way it hadn't been before. But here's what she couldn't stop. She couldn't stop the melodies. They came without warning. In the shower, on the bus, in the middle of a work meeting when someone was talking about quarterly reports and her brain was somewhere else entirely. Little fragments of music, not songs she had heard, but something that felt like her own. Melodies she had never played, had never even fully formed in her mind, just floating, just existing, like they were looking for a way out. She ignored them. She told herself it was nothing, just habit, just memory. It would fade. It didn't fade. About 3 months after the lesson, on an ordinary Thursday evening, Maya stopped at a small cafe near her office to wait out a rainstorm. She ordered a coffee, found a seat by the window, and pulled out her phone to pass the time. The cafe was warm and a little crowded and smelled like cinnamon and wet coats. And then she heard it. There was a man in the corner of the cafe, maybe 60 years old, sitting at a small upright piano that Maya hadn't even noticed when she walked in. He wasn't performing. He wasn't showing off. He was just playing quietly, almost to himself. Something slow and gentle that Maya didn't recognize. His eyes were half closed. His shoulders were relaxed. He looked the way people look when they are completely, entirely at home. Maya forgot about her phone. She forgot about the rain. She sat very still and listened. And something inside her chest did a thing she hadn't expected. It didn't break. It opened. She sat in that cafe for 40 minutes after she finished her coffee. She didn't want to leave until he stopped playing. And when he finally did, when he closed the lid over the keys and picked up his own cup of coffee, Maya did something she almost never did with strangers. She walked over to him. She told him she loved the way he played. He smiled. A real smile, the kind that reaches the eyes. And he said, "I've been playing since I was 8. I'm not very good. I just love it." And Maya looked at him and said, without really planning to, "I tried to learn once. It didn't go well." The man looked at her for a moment and then said something she would think about for a long time afterward. He said, "The only people who can't learn piano are the ones who stop trying. Everybody else just needs more time." He picked up his coffee and went back to his seat. The conversation was over in under 2 minutes, but Maya stood there for a moment longer. And something shifted. Something quiet and stubborn and deeply familiar moved inside her. That same feeling she'd had at 7 years old in the 3rd row of the auditorium. That same feeling. Still there. Still alive. Still waiting. She went home that night and did not go to sleep for a long time. The next morning, she pulled a second-hand keyboard out of her closet, one she had bought 2 years earlier and barely touched. She set it up on her desk by the window. She sat down in front of it. She looked at it for a long moment, and then she pressed one key. Just one. A simple middle C. She held it down and let the sound fill the room. Then she opened YouTube. What followed over the next several months was not a movie montage. It was not fast or glamorous or easy. It was slow. It was frustrating. There were nights when her fingers refused to cooperate, and she sat back and pressed her palms to her eyes and wondered why she was doing this to herself. There were nights when she played the same 4 bars over and over for an hour and still couldn't get them right. There were nights when Mrs. Callahan's voice came back to her. Some people just don't. And she had to make a choice. Every single time. To close the keyboard and walk away, or to take a breath and try one more time. She always tried one more time. 6 months in, she could play a full, simple piece from start to finish. Not perfectly, but fully. With feeling, with her own quiet way of moving through the notes that was entirely hers and nobody else's. 8 months in, her colleague mentioned that the office was doing a small end-of-year gathering and they were looking for someone to perform something. Anything. Just something to make the evening feel special. Maya said yes before she fully understood that she had spoken. The night of the gathering, she sat down at the piano in the corner of the conference room that someone had brought in for the occasion. The room was full of her co-workers. People she saw every day, but had never really let see her. She adjusted the bench. She placed her hands on the keys. She took one slow breath, and she played. The room went quiet, and the way rooms do when something real is happening. Not politely quiet. Actually quiet. The kind of quiet that means everyone has stopped thinking about themselves for a moment and is just listening. When she finished, there was a pause, just 2 or 3 seconds, and then the room filled with applause. Genuine, warm, surprised applause. Someone said, "Maya, I had no idea." Someone else said, "That was beautiful." She smiled and said thank you, and inside she thought of a cardboard keyboard on a small desk. She thought of a rainy Thursday in a cafe. She thought of a man with kind eyes who said everybody just needs more time. She did not think about Mrs. Callahan. Not even for a second. That first lesson was never really her last. It was her beginning. The pain of it. The humiliation of it. The long, quiet months after it. All of it had been pointing her toward this room. This piano. This moment. And here is what I want you to take away from Maya's story. One bad moment does not have the power to end your story unless you hand it that power. One harsh word from one person who didn't take the time to see you. That is not the truth about you. That is just one voice, and you get to decide which voices you carry forward. Maybe your piano is something else entirely. Maybe it's a business you walked away from. A skill you gave up on. A dream you folded up and put in a drawer because someone told you that you didn't have what it takes. I want you to think about that thing right now. Seriously, think about it, and then I want you to go find it. Dust it off. Press that first key again, because the people who change their own lives are not the ones who never got knocked down. They're the ones who got up one more time than they fell. If Maya's story moved you, please leave a comment below. Tell me what your piano is. Tell me what dream you're still carrying. I read every single comment, and you might just inspire someone else who is reading along. And if this story gave you something today, a little courage, a little hope, a little reminder that it's not too late, please share this video. Pass it on to someone who needs it. You never know whose life a story like this might change. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.